Welcome to Lumient Live. I'm your host, Mark Ackroyd. Lumient Live is the podcast for advice professionals that believe in a values-based advice experience, but still have that question, how does it all work? We connect listeners with other advice professionals to hear best practice client stories or business examples and lift the lid on how they made it happen. Now, on to today's episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of Lumient Live. I am so excited today to have Michelle Smith of Source Financial Advisors on the call with me today for this podcast episode. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, really
Thanks
good.
for having me.
Hey, it's our privilege and our pleasure. Some of our audience may actually know you. We wrote about you and the work that you're doing, and we're going to unpack that today. So this has been something that's been a long time coming, and why I'm so excited. We'll get Michelle to introduce herself in a second, but why I'm so excited is that today's going to be a little bit of a different conversation because of the work that Michelle does. You know, Lumion is traditionally a platform that we speak so passionately about that helps, a CFO spouse and a non-CFO spouse start to unpack their values and align their values. But this is going to be a little bit different because Michelle works really closely with what she would call the newly minted CFO spouses. So post-divorce, post-widow, or single sort of female. So we're really going to get heavily into that. But rather than let me butcher what it is that you do, Michelle, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do over there at Source?
Sure, I'm happy to. So I am going on 30 years in this business. I actually followed my mother into the business. And, you know, 30 years fast forward, and my niche for the past 20 has been high net worth divorcing people, mostly women. And it's an incredible mission of our company. Everybody's all in on the overused word empowerment. Everyone here is all in on watching literally how taking financial control makes you take control of your life in different ways. Just last night, we had this amazing new office warming cocktail party, and about 15 women showed up, and just story after story, sitting there watching them talk about a new house they bought, the permission they feel is now available to them to have control in their life and to start chapter 2 of who they are, literally gives all of us goosebumps. And so that's who we are. We are all about newly minted CFOs, women owning it with their money, women gaining life control through financial control. We are based in Midtown Manhattan on 45th and 5th, and we have about a $500 million in assets and growing strong.
That's that's amazing. I mean, I got goosebumps just hearing that. We're going to really dive into some of the psychology here and some of the work that you do and what you see with your clients, because I think they're going to be really practical tips for our audience. And you've prepared a client story for us that we'll get into later. But let's stay on your mission, because I think that's such a powerful word, and couple that with the fact you're saying your team are all in. I love that. I love that. I think, too many times we sort of sit on the fence. Tell us a little bit about how you crafted your mission, why you went down this path, and how it is that you try to live that every day or keep your team all in.
Yeah, so I think the mission crafted me.
Sure.
Obviously, I think that in any profession, really, or any person, when you can find the intersection of life experience meets what you're naturally good at, meets the market and the need is there, it's a really good recipe for success. I say it all the time, like doing something you suck at and that you don't like. I mean, that's not a fun existence professionally. And so when you can kind of step back at any point in your career, no matter where you are, but certainly as a financial advisor, it's so important because when you can find that natural niche, it magnetizes the niche market. And it's such a resonance that is your differentiator. Investments are commoditized. I mean, it's been a crazy ride since 2020. I mean, last year was horrible, right, for all of us. But when you have that resonant audience, it's so authentic. It so naturally attracts your target market because it's who you really are. And your firm become like you're going to attract employees and a team, right? And I have eradicated the word staff from our vocabulary. The word staff is like should just be obliterated. Like if these are not your people and your team and you're not building the culture together, like staff is just like where are we? Like IBM in the 70s. And so it's really important to I think really dig a little deep and say, okay, like who are my best clients? Who do I enjoy working with the most? What's my natural skill set? What do I want to attract? How do I want to grow going forward? Like you can have your legacy business, but it's always a great opportunity to pivot to a natural niche. And, I grew up in a divorced family. My great grandmother in the late 50s got divorced from an abusive husband. So it sort of, came to me 20 years ago. I was like, wow, this is who I am. This is what I grew up with. I grew up with a single mom who like had to make it happen. I mean, she went to Merrill Lynch in the late 70s because she didn't want a ceiling on her income. So it's who I am. It's knowing what economic independence does for your life is what I'm on a mission to set the stage for. And so, yeah.
Yeah, look, we can hear it all in your voice, and for those watching it, can see it, your passion streaming through. A couple words you used in your initial intro that I'd love for you to unpack a little bit for us. You mentioned empowerment is fairly overused, but what you then went on to define was it's about control, permission, and controlling your life through controlling your money. Do you want to maybe elaborate on those points and how you came to craft those and how they emanate through your experience?
Yeah. So think about it. I mean, this is universal. Like economic independence is a form of necessary control. I mean, my favorite line, I think Tom Hanks said it, is like, money doesn't make you happy, but it makes life a lot easier. And really knowing that you are in financial control and these are your decisions and that you feel the agency to make them and learning, really learning deeply about what makes you tick, which is what I love about Lumient so much. As you know, I'm a little new to Lumient, 6 months, but even me, who considers myself, right, all advisors have an alpha. My alpha is definitely EQ, high EQ. I think female advisors are really strong at this. Even with me with 30 years of experience and high EQ and really deep connected relationships with my niche market, I can't even believe what using Lumion, it's added another layer and peeling back the layers of a client that I'm having conversations and stories about people's histories that it's just it's invaluable. And so I think that going back to why financial control is so important, yeah, it's important, but it also needs to be connected to like what makes you tick. Where do you want to go? And sometimes I think a fault of the industry is who knows what they want in 30 years. I like to focus on now. I like to focus on these values now and like, what do you see in the next year, especially coming out of a divorce? Like, that's a massive life change. That's a massive upheaval. It doesn't matter if you wanted it or you didn't. Like, everything changes the minute that word is out there, the minute it happens. And you have to rebrand. You have to figure, like, a lot of people get lost in their marriages and lost in their relationships. And often you don't even know who you really are anymore. And so having the ability in the moment of the transition, shortly after the transition, 1 or 2 years after it, to give you the grounding and the rooting of who you are and what you see for yourself, That's control. Now layer on the financial piece of it where you can make it happen with your advisor. I mean, these are, I say I have the best job in the world. Like, I talk about money and dreams all day long. And to help manifest them, to really help these women manifest what the next chapter looks like, I get goosebumps all day long. It's awesome.
I want to talk a little bit about manifesting and some of the ways that you in your practice do that, and then I also want to come back to a few points, but we'll no doubt get to them. Let's stay on manifesting. For anyone that hasn't followed Michelle Smith on LinkedIn, I suggest you do so. Right, if only not to be in awe of their amazing office, but the big green wall that you take such proud photos of with your clients and your team.
Don't you
Um,
just feel the power in those very real women? Like, it's power. It's like a power pose.
yeah, so talk to us about that because when we were getting ready for this podcast, I said, "Hey, I just reckon that's a really beautiful wall. Tell me about it." But it's deliberate. Tell me a bit about why
Yeah,
it's
it's
deliberate, how
super
you came to
deliberate.
that.
Like, I never really had an office that matched our vibe. And when we decided to renovate, we really, first of all, we wanted it to be anti Wall Street. We wanted it to be just very us, right? We're a little edgy. We're all very real in my company. It's like automatic drop into authentic conversations internally, externally. But our clientele is boutique, literally boutique. And so when we thought about what we wanted people to feel when we walked in the office, we have this very purposeful, stainless steel logo backlit that's very much like Prada or other boutiques you see on Fifth Avenue. The green wall, it's alive. Like, we don't have pictures of white dead presidents on the wall, right? It's not. I'm sorry. It's true. And then just to have like the mirror, which is very boutique, and then walking in and you can see the exposed brick in the background with my wife to CFO logo, which is the sub brand of Source, which is all about the financial literacy. It's last night was our office warming party, and every single one of those women, you just feel it the second you walk in. And that's really important. Your space speaks volumes. And even if you don't go through an extensive renovation and you're not your own RIA and you're just, not just an advisor at a larger firm, like, sit in different places in your office and see what it tells you. Make it you, make it your clients, make it them.
I love that. You touched on a point we speak about quite a bit, right? Which is if you walk into your office or you think about your meetings or your parts of your process, one of the first things you should do is consider how do you want someone to feel when they're in this process or in this environment? And you mentioned some words in there before, like powerful. You know, when you were designing it, working with people, what were some of the things you wanted people to feel when they were in your office?
Well, we wanted them to feel what's in them. And women who get divorced often feel um, marginalized, um, maybe ashamed that they should know more about money. Uh, a lot of them feel stupid that they never took financial control or allowed the financial control, or I call it the voluntary money coma, right? Nobody did it to you. You did it to you. Everyone has the ability to sit with their husband and say, now, abuse is different. Let's like asterisk that is not a good situation to decide you're going to want financial control if you're in any kind of abusive relationship. However, this is all in women. Like, women are the best multitaskers. They're often the CEO of the life and like the chief medical officer of the family, the everything, right? So, like, this is no different. This is just a different jargon, and it's stripping it back and it's making it practical. It's tying it to your values. It's like funding what you want in the next year, funding what you want in the next 2 or 3 years, funding now. Like, what do you want? And so all of these things are in women, and we want them to feel, and they do, that they are at the financial table in our office. They have a seat. They don't have to pull it up. The seat is there. We want them to stay at the table, right? Staying at the table is as important as having the courage to pull the chair up. And so everything about our space and our process is about keeping you at the table, letting you know that you deserve it, you have earned it. I don't care if you didn't earn the income in the family, that doesn't make you less. That doesn't mean you can't understand this. We just meet you where you are and we help you pull that power and control out.
So this raises the point that I sort of alluded to before in some of your language earlier, which I love, and I really want to spend some time unpacking. You used language before around helping people get agency or find agency to make decisions, and talking about the Lumion process, helping understand people's histories and helping them go through a rebranding exercise. All of this feels to me like a ton of identity work, for lack of a better term. Would that be a fair statement?
Very fair statement. You are creating a new identity. You're now single. Maybe you've been married for 2 decades. Maybe it was his career that was focused on. You were the plus one at everything, corporate, like everything was about this person often and your kids, right? You threw yourself into and took it really seriously and like should get an award for CEO of the entire family. And now, right? Kids are a little older, your marriage ended. Now you have to make, you know, a divorce is often the largest financial transaction any woman is going to make, often any couple is going to make. And so, yeah, it's about who who am I? Like not I want to go back to who I was, like who am I right now? What do I want? Like what matters to me, right? There's so much stigma around that, and it's really helping women figure out what makes them tick. I don't care if it's you want a new job, you want to seriously throw yourself into philanthropy. Like, what do you want? What do you see right now? What do you want your kids to see? What do you want your legacy to be? If it were right now, what do you want people to say? And so that is part of, yeah, it's definitely a lot of psychology, but it's also just natural. Like these are conversations we all have with people, like conversation with your girlfriend, conversation with your best friend. Like we're just folding money into the mix.
Yeah. So maybe go that next layer down for me, right? And we'll eventually get to a client story that you've brought in for us. But what are some of the ways? Because this is clearly a bit natural to you, but I know how hard you work at this. What are some of the ways that you sort of help your clients find that identity, find that permission? Because I could imagine, after however many years, let's call it 20 years, 30 years of marriage, where you don't have that identity, it's not something that just switches on overnight, right? Like you must have to do some coaching. And what are some of the techniques, questions, frames that you use to help them get there?
Yeah, so I think really one of the first things is just understanding, like one of the most important conversations is where people live in that moment, right? If a lot of women want to keep what was the marital residence, right? Maybe it's for their stability for a period of time, the kids, and they may have traded off other assets. And, knowing that down the road they might right size that. We don't use the word downsize with women. It's so like scary. Don't use the word budget either. But it's really talking about that personal space. Like, okay, we've got this personal space, we're in it right now, but what would make you want to make a change? Like, is it tied to a graduation? What would make you want to create the next layer of this? And it might be create the next layer in the house and renovate it, or renovate a room, or get a new bed and redo the bedroom in your colors, not the couple's colors. It's really getting into where they are in their space right now, and of course what that costs. Will that be sustainable for a period of time, given the assets, given what happens when child support ends, what happens when spousal support ends, and really start having the conversation in that way so that we can then tie the finances and the settlement and the income needed to support it. And right, that's where, the beauty of the rate of withdrawal comes in, but it comes in back door in a sustainability conversation versus, well, if you have 30 years, like 4%. Like, we don't do that. We back financial planning concepts in the back door, and that's how we teach it. That's how we teach it. And so, really important first step is just really addressing where they are in their space, in their life right now, tying the financial data into it, right? Not getting too scary too fast. Last thing you want to do is show a failed Monte Carlo simulation on day 3, right? We talk about, like, okay, well, probably not sustainable long term for a few months or years. Sure, we'll have to, right? So it's just a very natural life conversation, and yeah, we have to tie money into it and what that money will do, and we want it to last. Nobody walks in my office and says, "Hey, I'd like to hire you to make sure that my lifestyle gets cut in 30 years," right? Everybody wants to maintain their lifestyle. Everybody. It's just reorganizing your priorities so that we make sure those are funded, right? So another thing that we are big advocates about is we don't ever endorse a full budget cut, right? If we see somebody's numbers need to be right sized by 20%, we don't make that cut across the board. We ask you to tell us, what are the 3 or 4 most important things you spend money on that make you feel good and whole? You know, nobody's taking my shoe budget away from me, right? It might be travel, it might be wellness, it might be a family compound that you want to, like, right size your house and buy a vacation home for future grandkids and whatnot. What are the things that are non negotiable to you that make you feel whole? Okay, cool. We're not going to touch those. But if an adjustment has to be made to keep your lifestyle sustainable, we're going to make those shifts here, right? And it's that everybody has categories of mindless habitual spending. Everybody. If we can get mindful and change the habit of the 70% of the stuff that can be touched, or the 50%, whatever, that's powerful. And now the budget talk isn't a budget talk, it's a priority talk. And what are we doing again? We're getting into what makes you tick. And so that's a huge piece of the process. Cash flow is the largest determinant of the success of a long term plan, not investment performance. Of course, you can't lose your money. However, what you spend and what goes out, especially when income stops coming in, that's the determinant. So we hit that head on early, but in this very graceful, intentional, sustainable way.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's a bias I hold to with financial planning, right? It's about the fundamental flow of money, and you can't have that conversation. You can't give a true financial plan without knowing if dollar comes in here, dollar goes out there. Like, what's the best way to use that dollar? Like, you can't not start with a budget and cash flow. But I love the art to what you're saying here, which
But,
is
like, also, you've got to know your clients' spending priorities. They're going
absolutely.
to call you to make choices. And if you don't have that down and you can't mirror back, well, okay, so this is interesting. That's not in what you said was a priority. Have those changed? What's driving this ask? And so you need to know, what are the 4 most important things? Like, everybody in our company knows the categories. We know what makes these people tick. We know what their priorities are. And now we can have conversations about, okay, cool. We can talk about it, not in the initial priorities. Maybe it's a good time to revisit those. Did those change? Or sometimes it's this, like, natural evolutionary conversation that gets back to, you know what? I really don't need that. Something else was driving this. I had a crappy month. I just had a fight with the ex. I'm sick of that. He can take the kids to Europe for 6 weeks and I can't, right? That'll blow my budget up. He's still making, right? So often there's other drivers there. And I don't know, that's the stuff that makes me tick as well.
Yeah, but you hold space to ask, and you've already set a foundation to gain permission to ask, and you're framing it in the light of, which is what I love. Of, it's not a you can't do anything. It's a we want to be really conscious about the ones that you have said are really important, let's spend all the money there, and spend really extravagantly, or maybe extravagantly is not the right word, on the stuff that's so important to you. And the stuff that's not, let's just be a little bit more ruthless about that, because quite frankly, when you're in this room, you say it's not important, so shouldn't change when you're outside the room. Michelle, the other, when you're talking about the questions you use or the conversations you have, the other one that I really loved that you said is, what would make you do X? So what would make you change, complete those renovations? What would make you make those changes around your finances? And I wonder if some of the art to this question is, there is often a unspoken event in the back of people's minds that we're delaying gratification until that's done. And that question that you're asking is almost putting that on the table, so you know what you've got to play with. Or, to go back to a word you used earlier, you're giving them permission to go, hey, you could do this and not have to wait for that. Is that sort of what you're looking for?
I think two things operate, right? Because impulsiveness is also, something to deal with, right? It's fear and greed at the end of the day, right? But it's also having these intentional conversations also controls impulse, right? And impulse is behavioral finance in action. And being able to talk to people about impulse, and if something's done too quickly, large, right? Like, let's talk about the impact of that. Not saying no, but let's talk about the impact of that. So yeah, and there is definitely, certainly in my client base, almost like this embedded, oh, I can't do that. I could never do that. I can't have a second house. It's like, well, what if we model what that looks like? And what if we could create it with some fine tuning, or maybe some big tuning? I don't know. But I always say, like, let's play with a base scenario. Let's just play. Let's like get a base scenario on paper. And I, my team laughs at me, but my favorite is, okay, like, stop with the I can't, stop with all the blah blah blah, what he said, what your dad said, what your brother says, whatever. Like, stop. Right now, you and me, if I wave a magic wand and what you want right now falls out of it, tell me what we're picking up. And that magic wand, like, let's put all of the doubt on the shelf. We can take it down in a second. Right now, this moment, magic wand, what you want falls out of it. I can do that. What is it? That's a powerful exercise.
The word you use there that I love so much, and it's something that I hear a lot within just psychology in general, is tapping into that play. As adults, it's something we don't give ourselves permission to do enough, whether it be a professional bravado that we try to do. I would imagine within the financial planning community, we know that people turn up to these meetings with personas going, gee, I'm meeting with an advisor. I better look like I've got my money in order, or I better quickly
Imposter
have a look.
syndrome,
It's huge, right?
financial imposter syndrome is alive and well.
Absolutely. So, I love the wand exercise, right? You're inviting play. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's almost, it's so anti expectations, right? So when a prospect walks into our office, or a woman who got referred because she's about to get divorced, and what lawyer should I hire? What should I be getting in order? Like, the second they walk in, you want them to feel like their shoulders going down, right? So that's back to the space. But then, like, it's almost an anti financial experience to sit there and encourage playful thought with money, right? That feels, it could feel a little dangerous, like, oh, it, but to really encourage what it is you want out of you. And then, can we fund it? How can we fund it? What do we have to let go of if we fund it? Is that worth it to you? Maybe not now, but like, let's create a base scenario for what you just told me fell out of the wand. It's really cool. It's a really cool exercise. It like, there's like, a lot comes out of that. A lot comes out
I
of
can
that.
imagine.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining how I'd answer that. And I'm pretty open, I think.
Yeah.
That's look, Michelle. I think that's excellent. How about we take a quick pivot here? I know you've got many a client story, but you've got one in your back pocket that you've brought in today that sort of exemplifies what we've been speaking about. Why don't you tell us a little bit, and obviously change the names and do what you need to do, but tell us a little bit about this client example of how you bring your expertise to life.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a client example through Lumion actually, and it's actually two short stories. But the
Hey, we'll
first
take
one
them all.
is a client that has been with us for a while, and she's been divorced for 8 years, and she used to be um, in her own right in the medical profession, successful, retired, divorced, no income, um, and we've noticed about her over the years that she's her non-negotiable is travel. Like her non-negotiable is travel. She's got a boatload of brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews, no kids of her own, but travel is her thing. And we know that, and we know her really well, and she loves us and we love her, and it's a very connected, great relationship, big client. But when we went through Lumient with her 3 months ago, we got to the bottom of why travel was important. And like out of nowhere, I can't even tell you when in the process it happened. I don't care. But like Lauren and I were sitting with her, Lauren's our relationship manager, and she was telling us the story of remembering saving her money to go to the store to buy the Barbie that she wanted. And that act of it not being given to her and her saving it and the Barbie, and she remembered the smell of the story. I mean, we're talking 50 plus years ago. And she went with her grandmother. And then what came out is sort of this ethic they had in their family of you work for it. And almost like you don't frivolously spend, and you so she doesn't spend on other things, but somehow travel, especially when she incorporates and takes care of others and takes them on extravagant trips, she gives herself permission to do that. And we really got to the bottom of why. And it was this belief that everything else is frivolous, and she was hearing her family and those voices, and but travel and taking care of her family through travel felt permissible. And it is a theme that runs through her life in other places where there's so much, almost like a disallowance, and she's slowly shifting into seeing where she can treat herself in other places because she can afford it. But the insight and that story that we got out of her through really doing a deep dive for 90 minutes through your platform. Thank you. I mean, what a gift, and what a gift to this person to she looked at us at the end and she's like, I feel like I just had therapy. I said, well, you did. You had financial therapy. That story was stuck in you. That like 50 years ago. So pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Really cool. So you've been working with her for 8 years, and you've now finally got to the bottom of it. How does that change what you do with her now? Like you mentioned, it sort of rippled through everything within her finances. How does that change your relationship now? What are you doing anything differently, or is her plan changing?
Yeah. What we're doing is we're giving her permission to tell me after travel, is there anything out of that magic wand you would want permission to spend on? Like we're telling you you can. We've done the plan. Like there's another, let's call it 25,000 a year that you're not touching of your sustainable withdrawal rate. What do you want to do with it? Right? What's come out of it for her is intentional philanthropy. And this is a really cool pivot because, right, I know this in our work, and we're about to do a really cool philanthropic event in May. But women are often in marriages on a philanthropy allowance. Maybe he's giving the 50s and the hundreds or the million to the hospital or the thing that matters to him, or he wants the family name on the wall or whatever. She is often given 10,000, 20,000, 1,000, for a table at something that matters to her. So there's this unlearning that has to happen sometimes for women with philanthropy, which is they weren't part of, they didn't have a voice in the philanthropy often. They went along for the ride. They kind of had to ask for, oh, could I have this? Could we afford that? But his philanthropy mattered. Hers was like marginal. It was an allowance. And for this client, she chose that the other 25,000 she really wanted to gift to her nieces and nephews right now. And she's like, wow, that money will change their lives right now. Like they're all getting married, have it. And so through that exercise, knowing that the magic wand produced philanthropy, which ended up being philanthropy for my family during my life, changing lives, having impact now by giving five or tens, that was huge. And so it hasn't changed our relationship with her. It's certainly made it, she's a lot more transparent to us now. What makes her tick is a lot more transparent. There was a lot of stuff hidden, right? All human beings, we've got closets. But our work with her has changed in the approach. Not, it's not different. It's just more meaningful.
I love that, Michelle. It's such a great example. You mentioned you've got a second one.
Yeah. So this is a client 1 year new to us, and she's like just this really cool, didn't work during the marriage, long-term marriage, two daughters, one in college now, one looking at colleges, and 1 year newly in control of her money. And one thing that kept coming up during the divorce, even we helped her during her divorce, was sort of this like cash is queen, I don't say cash is king, cash is queen, cash is queen, and like putting it under the mattress. And there was all of this like cash, cash, cash stuff, which right now doesn't look so bad, especially with interest rates where they are. However, when we went through the Lumion exercise with her, it, she comes from Italian heritage, and her grandfather was all about like literally hiding money in walls, like burying it in the backyard. And these stories came up about her grandparents and this cash, this cash, this cash. And then of course her fear that if she didn't have that cash to touch and it was tangible and like it was like her cash museum she could visit, what really was going on for her was, yes, an old family history of you have to have cash literally in your wall or ground, but also, and this is very common with women, nobody wants to make a mistake with their money, but they really don't. Like a mistake could be fatal to your lifestyle. And so what came out of the whole Lumion thing there, again, right? Fascinating that it tied to a very old family story and dynamic. But what came out was, okay, what amount of cash do you always want to look at and visit? Can we pry away the rest of it so that what you're telling me is the most important spending categories? Because otherwise, we can't fund that. We can't be negative return on like how are we? So it became this cool, again, the folding in of what mattered to her now, what she saw, that aha moment. I call it the Lumion aha moment. There's an aha moment within the process. There is an guaranteed, we can never say that in this business, I guarantee you there is an aha Lumion moment when you go through this exercise, and you had better record that one.
That's the promo there.
Yes, just throw that on your website.
Yeah, we got a Michelle Smith guarantee. I'm imagining the big sticker we can put on the website. There's a ton of emotion at play there in what you just said. If I could unpack a couple things, what strikes me is because we often speak at Lumion around the balance or the misalignment that can occur between the non-financial spouse and the financial spouse. But given you work a lot with newly minted financial spouses that are suddenly single, suddenly solo by themselves, the misalignment still occurs. But what you're finding is it's in their history. It's in their history, and you've got this real challenge, and we're grateful our exercise can play a role in that to find where that is, because what they say or what they do or how they're acting right now is either in misalignment with it or is driven by that. And what they want to do is completely different as well. And your job's to piece it all together and go, hey, if you want this, you need to do this, right? It's as simple as that, but you got to get it out of them, right?
Well, and I also feel like it's not our job to piece it together. It's our job to set the stage for them to piece it
I
together.
love that. Yeah.
I mean, that's the agency. People follow a plan they make, not that you make.
I love that. It raises the point we were speaking about before is, when we were speaking about cash flow, you've got to empower people to make choices outside of your office. There's only so much you can do when they're in your beautiful office that inspires action, because unfortunately, whilst you wish that every time they were at the register they'd go, hey Michelle, is this on trend, that's no way. One, there's no way to live, but two, there's no way to run a business. Right? Like, they need to be able to go, no, I know exactly, I've had this conversation, I know exactly that I can tap away here, that's fine, I'm on track, I've got permission to do this, I give myself permission to do this, I've got the agency to do this, and hey, it's on brand for me, I'm going to do this, right?
Exactly.
Massive. Michelle, look, this has been such a great conversation. We'll summarize all of it up in a moment, but if we could pick your brain for one extra tip, please, one extra tip. So we've got a great Lumiant Live audience here, and when we've got expert advisors like yourself on the podcast, we often ask for one tip that you would give to people that are thinking of going down this pathway of a values-based approach, or are currently thinking about their client proposition or their client experience. What might one tip that you give them be to help them on their journey?
So the tip I'm going to give is the mistake I made the first time I did Lumient with a client. And this is huge. Shut up. Let them talk. We are we're natural salespeople. We're advisors that we're doing this, right? To connect, to have relationships with people, to help them shape a future. We're so used to talking. We're so used to having the information. We're so used to having the solution. Don't solve a problem that doesn't exist yet. Don't assume what an answer is going to be. Don't over engineer the meeting. Let them talk. Just ask the open ended question, right? They picked a value. Right after, wow, talk to me about that. What does that mean? That's really cool. Tell me more. Then shut up. I don't care. I keep a glass of water in front of me and I drink it so I don't open my mouth. And the first time I did it, I was so directive that I know I watched it shape answers. And it was almost like they felt like they needed to say that because I was guiding them there. And then, oh my God, maybe they were going to say something wrong. And that's huge. Women don't like to be wrong. People don't like to be wrong, but they really don't like to not be like in the norm of like a normal outcome. They like to know all the time, like, is this normal behavior? Is this a normal thought? Do other women feel like this? And I was guiding it and directing the conversation so much that it was changing the outcome. And I truly stopped in the middle and I said, you know what? I got to hit reset. We can do this again, or we can like do this next week, but I'm talking way too much and I see that I'm not getting out of you what you want to say. And she, right in the middle of the meeting, she's like, let's go back to square one. And we just redid it. And it's really important to this process through Lumiant lends itself to them sharing. You don't need to over direct. In fact, it'll cause faulty output.
Yeah, it becomes your story, not theirs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Michelle, look, I'm extremely grateful for the time you've spent with us today. It's been an amazing conversation, one that truly fills my heart. I love the work that you're doing. I love having conversations like this. It's really energizing. And to summarize it for our audience, we've covered a ton. today, and we'll do our best to summarize it for everyone. But we've spoken about the work you do with your sort of newly minted CFO spouses, and why that's so important to you and how you work with them. Covering things like giving them permission, helping them create their identity, getting them to tell their story and creating that new brand, giving them the space to play, creating environments within your office space that help them feel really comfortable to do all those things, so that you can help them get that empowerment or agency to make financial decisions around their life. Michelle, it's truly an incredible story, an incredible business that you're running, and we're just grateful to have you as part of the Lumiant community.
Well,
So thank you for your
I'm
time.
grateful for you all. Santi had an amazing vision, and clearly, look at who he attracted in all of you. And I feel that passion in all of you. So you really did. You hit a necessary void in the space, and you all wear your passion, and you're all excited about this. And I feel with every single one of your team members when I talk to them how committed you are to this. So thank you for continuing to elevate your product and your brand. Very grateful. It's been super, super impactful in my work, and I am a 30-year dinosaur. So that's a big statement.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thanks for your time. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Lumiant Live. If you really enjoyed it, we'd love if you could hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast provider so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes. Thanks again for tuning in.